called The Word. And I just want to speak some scripture into it before we start. John 1:1-3 says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made." So as we go into this next song, I just want everyone to lift up your voices in worship and just do whatever you need to do for your worship, whether that's jumping around, screaming, throwing up your hands, do whatever you need to do for your worship. But we're just going to lift up this next song to him, and we're going to lift up his word, because that's what the enemy flees from. He flees from his word because that's what holds power. So I just want everyone to worship with this next song. In the beginning, the Word was with God, and the Word was God Himself. There in the shadows, the whisper of light, and the veil of darkness fell.
which is the word that revives, the word that sends forth, the word that draws in. And a word, God, is that which was in the beginning and is with us now. So by your words, by your presence, teach us and lead us and guide us. And we thank you for the opportunity to worship today and to fall on our face before you and to honor you for who you are and what you're going to do now in this moment. And everyone agreed to this and said, amen. Hey, friends, grab a seat and let me say welcome to you. Especially, hey, you might be new here. You might be visiting. It might be summer vacation. You're visiting family. We always have people kind of coming in for the weekend, people moving into the neighborhoods. And above all else, we just want to say thank you for being here. We're just so thankful. My name is Scott, one of the pastors here. And I like to say it this way. That's just something I like to say. I know this about you. You could be anywhere, doing anything with anybody, but you chose to be here. And that's not lost on me. It's not lost on us. And we're just thankful that we get to be in a community where we can walk through some thoughts and walk through our lives together. I know that a lot of things happening probably in your worlds. People are kind of, it's that summer swing, like, you're past July 4th. So we got people like principals that are now getting ready. Like, it's work next week, right? It's here. Like, it's almost Christmas. I'm just going to go ahead and say it, okay? It's almost here. Right? I'm just saying. But if you're married to, or if you live with people that are in education, it's this time of the year, like, summer's still here, sort of, right? But we got a lot going on. And I just know that I love Sunday mornings, so it's a chance to kind of catch our breath. Like, okay, let's get our minds on the right things, keep the main thing, and especially, we know you got a lot going on in your lives, and so we need things that ground us, that center us, that kind of give us our bearings in life. So we have conversations that kind of help us do that. We're in one right now called Believe, and what I love about this conversation, this sermon series for a couple weeks is we're walking through the Gospel of John. So if you want to kind of just get a jump on that and you have your Bible, it might be on your phone, it might be on your device. You might have, like me, a paper Bible. That's kind of how I get down. I just like to hold it in my hand. So we're going to be in John. That's one of the biographies or Gospels of Jesus right in the New Testament. And we're just walking through this, and we're asking ourselves this question, like, what do we believe? When we talk about God, when we talk about Jesus, what do we actually believe? What do we say? And so these are some grounding principles. And we're going to keep coming back to this Believe series throughout the year and kind of just reaching back in touch. But last week, we started in John chapter 1. And we said this about this gospel, is that John as a gospel is not like the other three. You might know the other three, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. You like, okay, these sounds like my neighbors. Like they're popular names, but those guys wrote, well, with a different agenda. Mark was probably the first, and Mark kind of wrote the briefest account of this is what Jesus did. It's what he said. It's where he went. And Luke and Matthew did the same thing. Luke writes for non-Jewish people. Matthew writes for Jewish people, so he starts the book like, who's your mama and them? Like, the list, like, who's your daddy? Like, that whole list. Like, it's like talking to people from Aynor. It's like, who's your daddy? Like, that's how they got to figure you out, right? It's not like that in Long Island. I know, but here it's like, well, you're not from around here. So, like, that's how Matthew starts. But John's not like that. I love John because it's this book, it's one of Jesus's best friends. And he has one agenda, to tell you about his best friend. That's it. Like, when you read John, it's like one of Jesus's best friends going like, I got to tell you about my dude. I got to tell you about my friend Jesus. And he goes about it the way that I think we would go about it. Let me ask a question. Let me stop for a second and ask you a question. What would your best friend say about you if they had to describe you to someone you've never met? Let me ask you, what would your best friend, how would they start, what would they say about you to describe you to someone whom you've never met? Some of you go like, they probably start with a disclaimer, right? Like, okay, you got to meet my friend Scott, but first, okay, he's a nice guy. He's can I just, how many of you know right now that your friend going to just probably start with a disclaimer, right? Yeah, like some of us need a disclaimer. How about this? I want you to meet my friend. She is so sweet. She is sweet. She's a good girl. Just let's keep that in mind. She's so sweet, right? You're like, okay, but what? Oh, you got to meet my friend Steve. He's got a good job, okay? He means well. He really means well, Roger. Roger means well, okay? But if you got to know Roger, I got to tell you a little bit, here's a little bit of caveat. So sometimes we talk about our friends. Sometimes it's hard because we want to say two things at once. Like, she's really, really sweet. But man, she smiles like a saint, but she cursed like a sailor. She's, and then we'll say things about people, and I love this description. He is velvet covered iron. Oh, okay, so he's approachable, but solid. Yeah, that's what I'm trying. I'm trying to describe my friend and this, but I got to kind of reach in two directions to tell you about it, and that's how John feels. I think when he's trying to talk about his friend Jesus. I just want you to meet my Jesus. He's fully God and fully human. Like, what? I know, just hang with. It's kind of like there's a disclaimer. He's a pretty cool dude, but oh, by the way, he's God. He's God, but he's really approachable. And so John, when you read John, all through it, you're going to see a guy wrestling with what theologians would call a dialectical tension, meaning he's both, and in both is what makes it work. It's kind of like the roller coaster. That's the scariest thing you've ever done, but when you were, it's like not fun when it's happening, but then it's type 2 fun when it's over. See, type 1 fun is the fun that you plan to have. Type 2 fun is what all my friends get with me, that once they realize you didn't die, you go like, that was awesome. That was pretty cool. And so John's trying to talk about this Jesus going man, he's like the Word, and he's living, but he's always been, and he's fully God and fully human. And so John begins to tell the story. John 1. John says, okay, how do I tell you about my friend Jesus? Well, in the beginning, I got to start there. In the beginning, the Word. Well, the Word was, it was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was he is God, and he's the Word. And this word, we said this last week, that the English word is the logos. And he goes, okay, how do I start talking about my friend Jesus? Now, to the Greek audience who heard this, when they heard it in the Greek and they heard the word logos, he's saying he is the rationale of the whole universe. And then to the Jewish listener, the word logos, they would go so he's the supreme wisdom? He's yeah, my friend is basically kind of where it starts. And he is the originating idea. He's the rationale for the world. And without him, nothing makes sense. And he's just always been. When was he born? In the beginning. Because Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John talk about the humanity when he was born to Mary and Joseph. And no. I got to go back to the beginning. He's just always been. In the beginning was the Word. And in verse 2, he says about him, he was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made. It all passed through his fingertips. Everything just kind of worked through him and in through. So he's this is what I want to tell you about my friend. Verse 4, in him was life. He's okay, I talked about the beginning. Now what do I say? How do I describe my friend Jesus? He's life. He's the logos. He's the rationale. And then what do I say next? How do I describe him? He's life. That's what I'm not trying to tell you about his physical demeanor and character. I'm telling you about who he is. And he's describing his friend. He was life. And that he was not only life, he was, what do I say now? He was light. He's the rationale, he's the word, he's life. He's light. And he's the light, and he's the light for all mankind, and the light shines in the darkness. But unfortunately, I keep trying to tell you all that, but people keep missing it, and the darkness doesn't understand it. Now if you're reading John, here's a tip. When you read John, pay close attention to the tension. John will always point back to some tension between light and darkness, being thirsty and water in the beginning and the end. Like, he will always point to these tensions between the two, and he's like light. But the problem about my friend is, like, he's light, but the darkness did not comprehend it, like didn't receive him in the darkness. But here's the cool thing. It didn't overcome it, because he's pretty strong and he's pretty awesome. And he goes on to say more about him. Okay, so, and then this is John's integrity to say, okay, I got to be honest, I'm not the first person to tell you about him, so don't take my word for it, because there was another guy by the name of John the Baptist, and there was a man sent from God whose name was John, and he came as a witness to testify concerning the light, because I'm just trying to tell you about him, and so that through him all might believe. Like why? Like, he gives you the whole summary of Jesus. This whole incarnation, like, why did he come? So that you might believe. Believe what? Believe in him, and to put all your hope on him. It's like this is my friend, and so, like, I'm not the first person, like, but his whole purpose is that you would have some beliefs, you'd have something. And we said that word believe last week, which means you put all your weight on it, and you just, like, I just trust it, and I sit on it, and it holds me up, and it picks me up. And that's the point. Like, I want you to know my friend, and this is how I want to describe him. Verse 8, he says, he himself, meaning this messenger, wasn't the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. It's like, okay, my friend Jesus. And then so in verse 9, I want to really point to this today. We're going to look for 9 through 14. And John goes, okay, so that light, people talked about him coming. So when he came, in verse 9, he says that when he come into the world, like this is my guy, when he moves in, so verse 10, he was in the world, and through the world that was made through him, the world didn't recognize him. He came to that which is home, but they did not receive him. Verse 12. Yet to all who did understand who Jesus is, and they received him, and they're like, oh, I get it. This is light. This is life. We understand who, like, for everyone who believed, because that's the point of John's book. It's about belief, and like when you understand, when you grasp who Jesus is, your world changes. How you see the world changes. When you believe, like, things change. And people who believe in his name, God did something for them that they couldn't do themselves. He gave them a right. He granted them a right to become children of God. He changed their status. And there's some qualifiers in verse 13. He said they're not like, okay, I know other stories talk about how children are born, like who's your daddy and who's this and who's your mama. No. This is a different story. This is about being adopted by a father that you don't deserve. This story, John's like, I got to tell you about being a part of a family that doesn't involve a family tree, like Matthew and Luke and Mark. That's how they like. But here's the cool part of the story: like, you get a chance to be in the family tree through belief, and like this is grace, and this is honor, and because they're not born of natural descent. That's why John's gospel is different. He's not concerned about natural birth order. He's like, okay, do you know what good news that is? How amazing it is to know, like, it doesn't matter where you're born. It doesn't matter what number's on your mailbox. Like, this is the good news about Jesus. It's not a human decision. It's not something humans do. It's not about what you will. It's like being born of God, and that's the will of God. And so that's John's story. And I love verse 14 because I love the way he says this. And he goes back to the beginning, the Word. He goes right back to verse 1. So everything that I've just said, can I just go back to the Word? Can I just call him the Word? The Word became flesh. And I love, if you ever read the Message translation of this, Eugene Peterson says it this way. The Word became flesh and it moved into the neighborhood. That's how Peterson translates this verse. He became flesh and he made his dwelling among us. And the Jewish people are like, wait a minute, a God who dwells? Like, I've heard this story before. He's like, I know. You ever heard of the tabernacle? You ever heard of the temple? You ever heard of the Holy of Holies? Like, God is one who wants to dwell. He's the one that wants to walk with us in the garden. Like, this is him. This is the same dude I'm trying to tell you about. We have seen. Now, this is John going like, okay, can I just tell you? I was his friend. I saw him with my own eyes. So what did you see when you saw Jesus, John? Glory. I ask you a question. What would your best friend say about you if they were describing you to someone whom you've never met? John goes, glory? He's glorious. We've seen his glory. And it's the glory of the one and only Son. Like he came from the Father. And oh, by the way, you know what captured John's mind the most? He chooses this next description of his friend. What is the next thing you say? You've called him the Word. You've called him the Logos, the rationale. You called him the light. You called him life. You've called him Son of God. And so he's like, okay, my best friend embodied grace and truth unlike anything I've ever seen. You know, sometimes you try to describe someone and you feel like you're talking about two polar opposites. Because to talk about grace and truth can feel like polar opposites. And he's like, no, okay, I got to tell you that he was full of grace and full of truth in the same person. And you know why that's good news? Do you know what it's like to have to deal with a human that you're not really sure what kind of person you're going to get that day? Okay, was Jesus full of grace and truth? That means for 3.5 days he was all truth. In 3.5 days he's all grace. Consider what your prayer life would look like if you trying to get on schedule if Jesus is having a good day. The good thing about Jesus is you never have to guess. You never have to wonder what kind of person you're dealing with. You know how frustrating it is to try to deal with someone and they're just manically, is today a good day to ask Dad to go to the skating rink? Like, no, you better ask Mama today. It's Tuesdays, right? Like, if it's Saturday, you can ask Dad, but don't ask Mom Saturdays because she's grocery shopping. She ain't got time to take you to the skating rink. Like you just kind of, you learn how to deal with people's mood swings. John's like, you know the best thing I love about Jesus, John says? I always know what I'm going to get. You know how beautiful that is when you're praying? That you don't have to wonder if he's just going to smite me today or if he's going to love me. But we sometimes we don't, this is where I would say we struggle. And I say we struggle because I thought this might be a good illustration to try to explain this. Is sometimes in life there's these two opposites. And a lot of times these opposites, we don't know how to balance them. And if I were to say that he was full of grace and also full of truth, we go like, okay, well, which is he? Is he grace or is he truth? And you ever dealt with people that you felt like, is this a good day? This is a bad day. I don't know. I'm on the wrong day, and I don't. Should I ask? And maybe I'll just wait because she's just not in a good space right now. And you know how frustrating this is to be unpredictable as a human being. And this is why people don't know what to do with God, because they go, well. Is he good or is he going to smite me? Is he full of grace? Or is he just so full of truth? And we know, we got some people, they're good at grace, right? Now when you read these words in John 1:14. The last of it, the NIV gets it closer to the Greek than the NLT. The NIV says he is full of grace and truth. And it's in that order: grace first, truth second, which we'll get to. And the word full means is plerus. And it's this word that if this was a cup and it were full to the brim, that if you bumped into it, it would spill all over you. You know, there's some people that when you bump into them, they just spill on you, like whatever they got going on that day. Some people just bleed all over you sometimes, you know? Or whatever they got going on, there's some people you just kind of avoid because you know if you bump elbows with them, whatever they got going on is just going to spill all over you. And you're like, I don't have the mental energy for that. So the question is, what is Jesus full of? Is he full of grace or is he truth? And is it 50-50? It's like, no, it's a double major. And I think this is where, when we talk about believing in God, this is because from the human perspective, we just know that some people are over here and some people are over there. And we go like, is God a God that is full of grace and he just condones anything and everything? Because some people love this God. They love a God that's full of grace. They say, hey, you do you, boo. God made you that way, and it's okay. Or is it? God says there's no way God would ever say no. God always says yes, because on the grace side, he's just a God of grace, and a God of grace. And then some of us go like, I like that God. And a lot of you ascribe to that kind of God because you don't like being told no. But some of us like this God because we grew up with this God way over here, full of truth. And we grew up with people who said, with all due respect, and they say whatever they want to say, and it's very disrespectful. And they'll say like, well, bless your heart. And, they'll preface it. And I'm just speaking truth. Why are you mad? And we just know some people that, well, I just speak truth. I say it like it is. And for them, grace is so far away. Some of us, we go way over here to this grace because like that church hurt me. That representation of God hurt me so bad that I felt like if I were to show up at a church, the roof would fall in because there's no grace for people like me. So what we believe about God matters. Tozer said it like I mentioned last week. What comes to your mind when you think about God, whether he's here or he's there, is the most important thought that will ever cross your mind because it shapes your whole life. So is he full of grace? Or is he full of truth? Or is it maybe that there's something about this tension between the two that makes it work? Now, John chapter 8. I'm just going to tell you. I'm not going to read it all to you, but when John is trying to describe his friend Jesus, he's so full of grace, but he gives truth because he loves me, but he loves me enough to tell me when I'm wrong. He loves me and he sees my failures, but at the same time, he loves me enough not to leave me where he found me. And so John's like, there was an episode one time where in John 8, chapter 1, Jesus is at the temple teaching, and he's sitting down to teach. And as he's teaching, there were some rulers, religious people, who lived way over here on truth. They were Pharisees, teachers of the law, people who are like, we stand on truth. And you're like, what about grace? We don't have time for grace because the law is what saves us. And they brought this woman to Jesus. It's a peculiar story. I wish I knew more details. For example, why just her, and how was she the only one caught in adultery? Like, where's homeboy at? I think someone owed him money. I think that, like, he got a pass. Like, and I think that's the society sometimes. Like, well, it was probably what she was wearing, and so we'll bring her up. And it's not a new thing. And they bring this woman, and they bring her to Jesus. And they ask him the question, hey, Jesus, excuse me, sorry to interrupt class. Real quick, got a question. This woman was caught in adultery. And he's like, by herself? Like, what am I missing here? But that's because they were trying to trap Jesus. That was the point. Now, the law says we can stone her, right? Now, if Jesus sides here, well, he's justified by Jewish law to stone her. But now her blood is on his hands, and they got him. See, Jesus kills. We didn't kill her, Jesus killed her. It's a trap. But if you condone her, then you're making a mockery of the law, and you are duplicitous with God, and now you're no longer in step with God. And so, well, it's a trap. Which side are they going to catch Jesus on? Like the condoner, like, oh, baby, it's grace, it's okay. We all make mistakes sometimes, it's okay. Or no, you stone her because legally, well, I mean, it's just true, right? It's just true, and people should get what they deserve, right? And it's a beautiful story in its tragic truth that we all understand that sometimes people want to, like, just where's God? Is he just going to say yes to anything you want to do in life, or is just like there's no room for grace, there's no room for error, and some of us like, I'm never going to be good enough because, like, you see, this is what happens when people try to get close to religious people. You get killed. And Jesus, there's something else in John. When you read John, not should you only pay attention to things that are in tension and are always in flux, like light and dark, truth and grace. Pay very close attention to Jesus' body posture. Anytime the Bible mentions someone's body posture, it's not because they ran out of words to talk about. It's one of the most important things to notice. Because Jesus is seated to teach. Because a rabbi stands to read from the gospel, or to read from the Torah, and a teacher would always sit to teach. It's the opposite of what I'm doing right now. But culturally, it was so that no one would conflict or misunderstand, is he reading scripture or is he teaching what he thinks? And Jesus was seated, and he stood up. And why did he stand up? Because there's a woman that's caught in the balance. Pay attention to Jesus' body posture, because when someone's life is in the balance, John says, you have someone who will stand up with you. And Jesus stands up. And they say, yeah, you know what we should do? We should probably stone her, right? And they're like, maybe this is the one. We get him. But if he says she's okay, then he's out accordance to law. And so now we can convict him of preaching a blasphemous gospel. And so if we could just get him to decide, we got him. And Jesus kneels, stoops down, and then does something that John's the only person this is the only time Jesus ever wrote anything that we know about. Never wrote it on parchment. He wrote it in the dust of the temple floor. Now John's like, you remember the last time that you saw God playing in the dirt? It was because he was making people. He was bringing dirt up and and so if Jesus is playing in the dirt, it's because God's about to do something. Now, the readers who are reading John go like, whoa, this is good stuff. Like, John, you threw in a little detail that takes me back to the beginning. That's like good stuff, because John is a masterpiece of literature. Jesus stoops down. And then what happens over his head is that there's people arguing, what's the fate of this woman? Where should she land? Do we condemn her or do we condone her? And Jesus stays kneeling. Now that's important, because there will be times in your life with our decisions, God's going to go, sometimes I'm just going to let you feel it. And I'm just going to kneel down, and you're going to feel like you're all alone. You're going to feel like, my life's in the balance, and you're like, and you look around and like, where's God? And where's God? He's playing in the dirt. Like, why is he playing in the dirt? Because sometimes when our life is in the balance, God will let us feel the weight of our decisions, because a God that blesses us in the mercy blesses us in the chaos. And then he stands up again. And he says to them, okay, you who have no sin, ain't nobody ever messed up, you never done anything wrong, you just go ahead and start throwing your rocks. Go on. Get with it. It's time to stop talking about it. It's time to start being about it. Let's get it on with. And then he stooped down again. And once again, it's like you can feel this woman going, where's my lawyer? I got no, like, you're going to play in the dirt again. But it's not that he's just playing in the dirt. I don't know what Jesus wrote. But you know what I think? Now, this is just old boy from Aynor, so don't worry about if it matters or not. But you know what I really think? I think he was writing their sin in the dirt and going, which side do you want me to come down on you? What's your fate? I know your sin, what's your fate? So not only is she on trial, you're on trial. One by one, they walked away. And Jesus stands up. He straightened up. He stands up. John 8:10. And it's like this moment of tension is like, am I going to die today or what's going to happen to me? And when Jesus stands up and he looks her in the eye and he asks her a question, woman, where did I go? I see nothing but a bunch of rocks on the ground. I don't see men standing around anymore. Where did they go? Are you trying to tell me that no one condemned you? I know this was your greatest fear, right? That we'd wind up over here and you're going to be condemned. And so, no one, sir. Like, everybody came over here and I thought this is where we're going to be. But no, like, this is where I'm at. And she's wondering, we're going over here? You gonna tell me that my adultery was okay? Jesus says, no, I'm not going to condemn you. Now go now and leave your life of sin. And he offers her grace and truth. You see, what does John want us to know about Jesus is that he is a God that understands we deserve the wrath of God, and he's willing to take it. What does John want us to know about Jesus? That we deserve death. That's why Jesus died. All through John, it's understanding that it is this tension that I don't deserve Jesus, but yet I can have him fully. That's the point of the story. You mean that he is full of light and he is God, but he came into this dirty earth? Yeah, that's the point of the story. You're telling me that I'm a wretched sinner and I deserve all the punishment and but truth be told, we all know this. And we all long for this. I just need grace. And John's like, I think you get the point of the story. That he came full of grace and truth. That the truth of the gospel is that God loves you enough to say, you're a sinner. Scott, you are a wretched sinner. You're undeserving, and I love you anyway. So you're telling me that you're okay with everything? No. I don't think you understand what it's like to be a sinner and to walk in the grace yet. And your whole life is like, man, I am not worthy of God's love, but some reason he keeps giving it to me. That's the gospel. Some of you are like, there's no way, like I'm stuck here and there's no way I'll ever get to the grace of God. And I would tell you, like, it's not by man's intention or will. It is a gift of God, and it's a right given to us through Jesus. That's how he started the whole book. This you're going to feel like every day. Paul says, man, the things that I want to do, I don't do. The things I hate to do come easy to me. And even the Apostle Paul says, I just feel like I'm just on this roller coaster, and I feel like I'm just, and that's the gospel. Now, to go back to this question, then then how can we be like Jesus? Because that's the next question. Like, if we're to believe in the Jesus, like, in the truth is, like truth be told, we all deserve death. But the good news is there's grace for the fallen. And that's the gospel. And you would say, is it both? It's not like, here's what I love about it. It's not like Jesus is just full of grace, and there are some people that love an easy gospel. Love an easy gospel because it's devoid of truth. It's just like, you just do whatever you want to do, and God will just condone it. And like, I don't think that's the gospel. Matter of fact, the truth is, that's not the gospel. Bonhoeffer called that cheap grace. So you're telling me that Jesus died on the cross so you could just go do whatever you want to do. I don't think you understand the weight of the cross. Like, no. So that we would stand in truth and we would know the truth of God, that we are sinners, but yet there is grace. And so I'm asking you today, when you think about, you feel like, man, I feel like I'm so far from God. And I would tell you that that's true. But there's grace. So it begs this question then, like, so some of us, that story in John 8, you're like, I kind of feel like that's my story. Like, I feel like there are days I kind of go like, man, I just kind of wonder, where's God? I feel like I'm out here on my own, like God's letting me just to whatever. I've made some bad decisions and I'm feeling the weight of it. And I would tell you that tension doesn't mean that God has disappeared. Sometimes he's working on your behalf, and you just can't see it. And so I would tell you that sometimes that we're going to feel like, I feel like I need someone that's going to stand on my behalf and to help me. And so I would tell you that's what John would have us to know about his friend Jesus, that he come full of grace and truth. He loves you so much to offer you grace right where you are. But he loves you enough not to leave you there in a pattern of sin. But that begs the question for us, right? And it was just on the screen, okay? So how do we? Because I think this is something the church, we just got to get better at. How can we be people full of grace and truth at the same time? Number one, be predictable. Be predictable. Be trustworthy. A lot of times people don't pray to God because they don't know what kind of, I don't know, is he going to smite me and like kill me, or is he like, I don't know. But the beauty of this is like, God says, come to me all who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. You can trust me, you can approach me. And so I think that the church, we need to be more approachable with the grace and the truth. Now I don't know that it's just because it's how he wrote it or how he said it. But I do find it intriguing that John says Jesus came with grace first, truth second. And I don't know that you can switch it, right? But what if there's a lesson in that? Some of us need to start leading with a lot more grace. And we need to have more grace for people. I know that's for me because I love to give truth, man. I love like, man, Jamie, like, this is it, man. With all due respect. But what the world might need is velvet-covered iron. And I think the church needs to wrestle with this. That sometimes the tension is the point. That's what gives us the energy. That's what makes this happen, is living in the truth and the grace. So then how can we do that for others? I would say, well, here at The Rock, we made a decision. We're going to lead with grace. We're going to lead with grace. Come as you are. Just come right where you don't have to like wonder like, will God accept me? Like, we're going to lead with grace, and we're going to offer truth. And we're going to say things like, the grace is sufficient for you, but I got to tell you the truth of the sin in our lives, because that's what love requires, is all grace, all truth, all the time. Some people just want to be condoned, and you think that's what love is, and it's not. Some people just feel like like love, the only way people know is just through condemnation. But what if there's this middle seat, and there's like, God doesn't condone my sin. He's not going to condemn me, but he wants to convert me. And what if conversion's the point? That we deserve condemning, and we're all looking for some grace, but the way we get it isn't on the polar opposites, but it's conversion. And so Jesus says to this woman, go and sin no more. You're forgiven, but don't do it again. And that's the gospel. God, I just ask you to help us to know this and to see this today, that Jesus Christ offers us grace and truth at the same time. And I just pray right now that every person would know that there is a balance that we stand in, that we are sinners in need of the grace of God, but yet, and it's a gift that we have to receive through Jesus. And that we would hear John today, like, can I tell you about my friend Jesus that is full of truth, full of grace all the time, and you can approach him, you can ask of him, he will forgive you, he will love you, he will correct you, he will guide you and put you on a different path. And I pray that we would not come today to find ourselves being condemned or condoned, but we come today to find ourselves converted in the grace and the truth and the love of God. And I pray for that person right now that feels like they don't deserve it, that they would hear that's the point. We don't. And for those that we're just walking and doing what we want to do, that we would submit our lives to the truth of God. We ask you to help us apply this truth to our lives and to walk in it. And everyone agreed and said amen. Friends, I invite you to stand. We're going to continue to worship. We're going to continue to sing. And you might want to take a step today of responding. It might be taking communion. We've got that set on the corners. You might want to take a step of baptism today. Above all, allow the Lord to speak in your heart. Let us sing. Let us sing.
My chains are gone.
Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my soul, this cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest trial and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are still and striving cease.
all. Go in peace. Amen.
Praying God come and turn this thing around.